Karelian Isthmus mattered because water and land squeezed movement into a narrow zone. Between the Gulf of Finland and Lake Ladoga, this strip of land became one of northern Europe's most important strategic passages. It was not only a borderland, but a route where geography concentrated pressure. This was not a wide-open frontier. Forests, lakes, wetlands, and broken ground divided the landscape into limited usable routes. Because movement could not spread freely, armies and borders were forced into predictable corridors across the isthmus. So the isthmus became more than a strip of land between two waters. It became a compressed approach zone between Finland and Russia. Here, geography shaped defense, invasion, frontier pressure, and the security of St. Petersburg. The central feature was the land bridge itself. The Gulf of Finland blocked movement to the south, while Lake Ladoga formed a massive barrier to the north. Between them, land movement was squeezed into a narrower middle zone where routes became strategically important. Water shaped how armies could move. Lakes, wetlands, and broken shorelines limited maneuver across the isthmus, forcing travel onto smaller strips of usable ground. This made movement easier to predict, block, and defend. The forested interior added another layer of difficulty. Dense woods and scattered lakes slowed movement, reduced visibility, and made large formations harder to coordinate. Armies could advance, but the terrain decided where that advance could happen. The southeastern side pointed directly towards St. Petersburg. That made the isthmus both a shield and a threat. It protected the city from the northwest, but also formed one of the main land approaches toward it. Geography encouraged fortification because movement was already concentrated. Defensive lines, strong points, and prepared positions became valuable where lakes, forests, and narrow routes limited alternatives. Control of a few corridors could shape the whole front. Karelian Isthmus can be read through geographic roles. The waters narrowed the land. The lakes and forests restricted movement. The route pointed towards St. Petersburg. This is why the isthmus became a zone of defense, invasion, and frontier pressure. Some narrow land bridges shape history by concentrating movement between major barriers. Karelian Isthmus became a critical corridor between the Gulf of Finland and Lake Ladoga. This was not a wide-open plain. Water and wetlands narrowed movement into a confined strip of land, where routes became easier to predict and defend. The key effect was geographic compression. Armies, trade routes, and defensive lines all depended on limited movement space between two massive water barriers. The land bridge role made Karelian Isthmus more than a border region. It connected northern routes towards St. Petersburg while limiting movement into predictable corridors. In this landscape, water shaped the direction of land power. Some frontiers became difficult because water itself blocked movement. In Karelian Isthmus, lakes and wetlands turned the landscape into a fragmented defensive zone. This was not a smooth land corridor. Large lakes, marshes, and broken shorelines repeatedly interrupted movement across the isthmus. The key effect was forced routing. Armies and supply lines could not move freely across the terrain, so roads and attack paths concentrated into smaller, usable gaps. The lake barrier role made Karelian Isthmus more than a narrow frontier. Water and wetlands divided the landscape into controlled movement corridors, shaping defense, invasion, and military planning throughout the region. Some battlefronts became difficult because forests broke the landscape apart. In Karelian Isthmus, dense woods and scattered lakes fragmented movement across the entire region. This was not open terrain suited for large-scale maneuver. Thick forests, uneven ground, and scattered lakes repeatedly interrupted visibility and movement. The key effect was fragmentation. Roads and supply routes became isolated corridors through wooded terrain, while forests reduced coordination and slowed large formations. The forest front role shaped Karelian Isthmus throughout history. Dense woodland and broken lake terrain forced armies into smaller movement corridors, making the region harder to control and easier to defend. Some frontiers mattered because they guarded the approach to major cities. Karelian Isthmus became a strategic shield on the northwestern approach towards St. Petersburg. This was not a distant wilderness frontier. The southeastern side of the isthmus pointed directly towards St. Petersburg, making the corridor strategically sensitive. The key effect was directional pressure. Because lakes and forests limited alternatives, movement toward the city concentrated through predictable approach routes across the isthmus. The Petersburg Shield role made Karelian Isthmus one of Northern Europe's most important defensive frontiers. Geography narrowed movement toward the city, while lakes, forests, and limited corridors shaped how invasion and defense unfolded. Karelian Isthmus shaped history because water, forest, and narrow land worked together. The Gulf of Finland and Lake Ladoga compressed movement, forests slowed armies, and the route led towards St. Petersburg. More than a borderland, it became one of Northern Europe's most important strategic land bridges.